Hello, in this video I'm going to go over how to step away from a oakensoul 1-bar build and get into a powerful 2-bar build that is easy to run. It's probably the best thing to step off of an oakensoul build, in my opinion, because it is effectively uh, a 1.5-bar build of sorts. And so I'm going to go over how to set this up. Basically, I'm on a Arcanist base class, but you can do this on multiple different classes. It doesn't have to be an Arcanist. I'm just going to use this for demonstration purposes, and I'll get into a little bit later why I'm doing this. So let's start off with the character screen. I am 64 points into the stamina attribute. I recommend that because it's easier to sustain a beam build. That's going to be a lot better to have all your spells cost 1 resource, the dominant ones anyway. Um, Putting into Magicka is a little bit more difficult and tricky to sustain, so I would recommend going with a stamina build. It's much easier to maintain. The Thief is the best Mundus Stone for this. That's going to increase your critical chance rating by 1,982. In case you don't know, uh, basically 1% critical chance is 219. So you can do the math on what that does there. Anytime you increase your critical chance rating, that is going to effectively be how often you critically strike. So that's this green number right here that's being buffed by the Thief. So on this build, as of right now, I'm going to critically strike 29.5%. Now, I will say I don't have any of the skill points or skill lines filled in, so that's why that's lower right now. Um, but we'll get into that. So that's the attributes and the Mundus. Next, we'll cover the champion points. The green tree, you can set it up however you want. I recommend getting these 3 up here. War Mount, Gifted Rider, and Master Gatherer are all good, and then also Steed's Blessing, and then you want to fill in as many passives as you can. If you're kind of short on champion points, then I would probably skip the Master Gatherer and only fill it into, I believe it's 15 for the first stage, and then just fill in what you can. The most potent passives are going to be down here, the Rationer, Liquid Efficiency, um, Treasure Hunter, Steadfast Enchantment, those kind of things. Your break fall damage in case you go off a cliff or something. So those are the things you want to focus on, and then fill in the rest as you level up your account for CP wise. For the red tree, we'll go over a couple of things. I recommend Boundless Vitality and Fortified on all your builds. Just leave those stapled in. Uh, getting you more armor and more max health is going to help your team out, stay alive if you're in a trial or a dungeon. I would just leave these on and don't move them. They should just be cemented, in my opinion. The other 2 are kind of flex around depending on what you're doing. If you are in a trial DPSing, Spirit Mastery should be a staple on your bar. If you're a DPS, you're expected to be able to get the resurrections if somebody dies, and the reason for that is if a tank has to maintain taunt and be able to block mechanics and pay attention to chaining in things. That's a very busy job to do, and they can't stop to res people when they're maintaining that. The other role that's there, not counting DPS, is the healers. If they stop healing your tank or you could die, and then it could start snowballing from there. So that's the reason why DPS are expected to resurrect in trials. You want to be able to speed that up by a lot, slot this, and that'll help. So for trash pulls on a stamina build, in a trial I would not recommend slotting this because it's procced on whenever you kill an enemy, and that is reduced when you are in a group of 12. You may or may not get the kill, so this is likely not going to activate that much. So I would suggest instead going into this node here and slotting Celerity, that into the Wind Chaser node, and then slotting Celerity, because this movement speed is active regardless of when you're in combat or not, and that is going to help you move out of mechanics, get from add pull to add pull, those kind of things. That should also be slotted on your bar. Um, Something to consider if you're having trouble with sustain on your build. Rejuvenation is not great. It's only 90 recovery, which basically means it's 45 recoveries per second because recovery only ticks once every 2 seconds. So this right here is really only valuable if you're going to parse. So keep that in mind. This is not that much of a game changer. If you are in a content, I would recommend slotting something else. So this is probably a flex if you've got everything else covered, but those are the main things there. This right here, this bloody renewal is better for if you're solo or something like that. And then also strategic reserve, of course, if you're soloing, then you can slot that to help your health recovery. But for the most part, I would slot spirit mastery, fortified, and boundless vitality, and then your fourth one can be celerity. But spirit mastery should be on your bar if you're in a trial for sure. Probably a dungeon as well if you're a DPS, depending on what type of content you're doing. But keep that in mind. So let's get into the blue tree. This is the most pivotal part for DPS. Depending on how much CP you have, you're going to want to fill in your slottables first. And those are these two up here. For a beam build, you're going to want to have Biting Aura. This affects the area of effect. And also Master at Arms, which affects your direct damage. Those two should be on your bar absolutely, because that's what the Arcanist beam build does basically, is area of effect direct damage. From there, if you're on a parse, you definitely want to slot Exploiter because the trial dummy has 100% uptime on off balance automatically, so you want to take advantage of that. If you're not doing a parse, this may not be helpful for you because if your group that you're in is not proccing off balance very much, then this is kind of a dead slottable. So if you're doing a pug or something like that, I would say probably skip that CP and move into something else. Something that gets overlooked, this right here, Occult Overload. I recommend all DPS slotting this. This is really good for ad pulls. It'll cause the ads to explode with oblivion damage, doing damage to all enemies within a 4-meter radius. So that is really helpful for cleaning out trash, make them blow up basically. I would not slot this for boss fights or for parsing, or you want to keep it for areas where you're going to be killing a lot of stuff. Solo, this is really good. You can make them blow up with that on. So if you're parsing and you need critical damage, you need to do the math on your build to see what you've got for critical damage and see whether or not you need to slot fighting finesse or backstabber. There are some cases where you do not need to slot either of these, and so you may be wasting a node when you're parsing. You need to know how to do the math on figuring out where you're at with your critical damage. So I will go over that too. Wrathful Strikes is another very powerful node that you can put on if you've got some of these others that are not effectively helpful. But make sure you have all these passives here filled in. These help with your status effect chance and your weapon damage on status effects. Those are really powerful as well. And then you can start filling in kind of, we'll call it optional stuff here, like Untamed Aggression is just pure weapon damage that can be slotted on your build. So that's the CP trees. So now we're going to get into the gear really quickly. For the purposes of this video, I'm only going to run Deadly Strike, Velothi, and Tideborn. And the reason why I'm doing that is I want to show you exactly what you can do when there's no trial gear on your build and how effective you can still be with this build. So anybody that says, oh, I don't have the Slivers of Null Arca set, I'm not going to do any good, that's not true. You do not have to have trials gear to effectively do enough damage. That's not accurate at all. You can still do quite a bit of damage with no trials gear, and then you can go farm a trial with this setup, and you'll do just fine. If you're going into a vet trial and you're just kind of farming gear, you're not going for a speed run, an achievement of some kind, like a hard mode clear or something like this, this build will do absolutely just fine, especially if you've got 6 to 8 people set up like this. You're going to mow down the trial pretty easily because, for one, the weapon damage and the penetration that you're going to be rocking on this is going to be absolutely amazing for clearing out ad pulls, and that is the longest portion of the trial in most cases, is clearing out trash. So let's go into setting up your skills. So I'm going to go into the skill tree, and we are now in update 49. So we have the ability to respec this stuff on the fly. So even when I don't have any skill points used, I will recommend that you use the respec function anyway. And the reason why I'm doing that is because it's easier to load your points. And also, if you make a mistake, it's really easy to back it off because all you have to do is use your shoulder buttons or whatever function that is on PC, probably an arrow key, I'm guessing. All you have to do is back it off with the other shoulder button. So if you're not in that and you spend a point, then you have to hit the respec button to get it back anyway. So you may as well just start off with the respec. It's really easy. All you have to do is hit the square button. And I always start down here in the very bottom so I don't forget. Go into your provisioning, and you're going to want to make sure you put in your gourmand and your connoisseur so that those are extending your food and drinks, whatever you're running. And then alchemy, you want to fill in your medicinal use. So, for example, if I accidentally put on a point on chemistry, I can just back it right off. I'm inside the respec. It doesn't matter. This helps also speed up your process because you're not having to hit the confirm button every time you want to spend a point. It just goes on. So we'll put one there. We're going to start off with the minimum stuff here just to go over. Put in your Undaunted passives. And then we'll get their medium armor passives in and the light armor passives. And I will go back into the gear here in just a second. So I recommend that you have 3 skill lines for weapons leveled up 100%. And I'll go over that as I go as well. But Destruction Staff, Dual Wield, and Two-Handed Sword are the ones you're going to want to use. So you're going to want to put points into Critical Charge and then morph it to Stampede. And then fill in all of the passives there. And then for Dual Wield, you want to fill in all the passives. And then we are going to buy Blade Cloak and morph it to Quick Cloak. The reason why we use this is because it's going to proc our front bar weapon glyphs 100% of the time. It's going to give us major expedition for 4 seconds, and it also gives us major evasion for 30 seconds. That makes us more defensive. And then the last one we're going to do is the Destruction Staff. We're going to fill in. We're going to want Elemental Blockade. The reason why we do Blockade is I'll just back that morph off and we can go over it right here. This is only a 10-second skill, which means you're going to have to babysit it more often. The Blockade, that's the unstable morph. The Blockade version lasts for 15 seconds, and it also applies status effects. So if you're using a fire staff on your back bar, it's going to increase your damage to burning enemies. If you have a frost staff, it's going to reduce armor from chilled enemies by applying minor breach. And then if you have a shock staff on the back bar, it will set concussed enemies off balance. So depending on your group, you may need to use a shock staff. You may need to use a fire staff. Depends if you've got somebody proccing off balance. You may want to ask one of your DPS to run a shock staff for this so that you get that in the group. But I recommend Blockade for those reasons, and then fill in absolutely all of the Destruction Staff passives, and those are the skills we're going to use for the weapons. Okay, so that's the weapon area. So the next thing we're going to fill in is the Fighters Guild all the way. We don't need Bounty Hunter. That's only a PvP passive. And then we're going to buy Flawless Dawnbreaker if you've got it. If you don't have the Fighters Guild leveled up all the way, then you might need to go farm some dolmens and power level your Fighters Guild. That's a good way to do that. So keep that in mind. If you've got the Mages Guild, you can fill those in and use scribing skill if you need to. Depends on what your situation is. So let's get into the subclassing because we'll just do the Arcanist. We're going to keep the Herald of the Tome skill line, so I'm going to go ahead and fill in. You want to use the Languid Eye. The Tide King's Gaze does move and follow your enemy. However, this one, if you have trouble setting this, you can always execute it and it will drag over to the enemy. This is the more powerful morph of the two. This does a lot more damage. The Tide King's Gaze lasts a little bit longer, but it doesn't do as much damage. So keep that in mind. So the Languid Eye is the better one, especially if you're parsing and not moving around. This one does more damage. So parsing Fatecarver. If you're parsing, you want the exhausting. Some people like the pragmatic for content because this will give you a damage shield. I personally just run exhausting at all times. I don't really have trouble with survival personally, but you may want to look into popping this on and off depending on what your circumstance is. For the Abyssal Impact, this is where we're going to get our Crux builder for the build. So we want this Cephaliarch's Flail. Probably screwed that up. We'll wait for the corrections department on that. Inspired Scholarship is the morph you want for this one. If you have trouble with sustain, then this recuperative treatises can help give you some resources. Parsing you probably want to do with the Inspired Scholarship though. And then you want to fill in your passives, obviously. So we'll do that. I'll buy this just in case I need it. I don't know if I will or not. So all right, so while we're still in the respec, we can go into subclassing and buy whichever one we want. So we've already got Assassin on there, and I'm going to put Aedric Spear on this third line here. So for the Assassin line, I'll fill in all the passives, and then I'm going to put points into Grim Focused. Really, for the most part, this doesn't get used as much anymore. It's more of a you get a heal out of it if you need it. So I would recommend Merciless Resolve because the heal is bigger. If you need a heal, this is kind of a good way to get it. Mark target and then using Reaper's Mark. This can be really powerful, especially in ad pulls if you are skilled enough to apply it to the stuff that is going to die. I can show that skill off here. I've done a video on this. I'll put my link in my description for the DPS videos that I have done. But Incapacitating Strike is the ultimate you want to use if you're going to use the ultimate from the Assassin's skill line. But so the Aedric Spear, really the only skill that I use on here is the Spear, the Blazing Spear skill, and then I just fill in the passives. So from here, we can pretty much just finalize the script here. We've bought everything that we're pretty much going to use. And so I'm going to set up my bar now for actually running the build. So for the front bar, we're going to go to the Quick Cloak skill here. And then you can put these in any order that you want. But I like to set this up in a specific manner so that I know exactly where the buttons are and what they are doing without having to look at it. Otherwise, if you start messing around with where stuff is at, you might have a little bit of difficulty in content managing mechanics on top of that. So keep that in mind. You want to pay attention to where you're putting stuff. There's a couple of different ways you can do this. Usually Incapacitating Strike is slotted. so that you take advantage of the assassination passives. You definitely want to have at least one skill on your bar from the assassination passive, or the assassination skill line, pardon me. So what you can do is you can put the incapacitating strike there, and then for parsing, this isn't as pivotal, but you can go with the camouflage hunter for the right here. This is mainly for taking advantage of the Fighters Guild passives. Also, if you critically strike, then you'll get Minor Berserk in content. Minor Berserk is not needed when you're parsing because it's provided by the dummy already. So keep that in mind. So let's get the back bar set up here. I like to put my long-lasting skills on the back bar, and why I do that is because then this prevents me from having to bar swap as often. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set this up for a parse build, and I'm going to put Stampede over here. I'm going to put Merciless Resolve over here, and I'm going to put that one right there, and I need another. Basically what I'm doing with my back bar is I like to set it up to where I only have to manage one or two skills. So what I'll do is I will put concealed weapon there, and then we'll put the other there. Okay, so now let's go over my bar. So this is my back bar. So what I'm going to do when I parse is I'm only going to use these two skills here on my back bar other than my ultimate for obvious reasons. This right here is going to give me minor expedition at all times. This one is giving me major prophecy and savagery at all times. It's there at the very top paragraph. This one here is giving me major brutality and sorcery at all times, regardless of what bar. So these three skills, the R1, the triangle, and the square, are giving me buffs regardless of what bar I'm on. The only ones that I need to worry about activating are these two right here. So basically, this is about a 1.5 bar build. The front bar is 4 skills, because this one you don't fire off at all. It's just there to proc passives and to activate when you critically strike. This one is here to activate your assassination skill line passives. This is here to activate critical damage if you need it. If you don't need critical damage, that's the only passive really that you're going to proc by slotting, because if you go to your Aedric Spear, this is the only thing that's required to get while you're slotted. Also the Minor Berserk, but as I said, it's provided while you're parsing, so you don't need to have that. So if you are parsing, for example, you could just put on more Fighters Guild skills, and then even if you don't use this, it's at least giving you more weapon damage with the Slayer passive here. So that's a good thing to keep in mind. So basically, let's go down to Parse now. So I'll go over the food really quickly. I am using lava foot soup, and the reason why you want to do that is because you get enough stamina recovery for that to be able to sustain your build. For a potion, for parsing, really you only need to have a stamina potion, but I've got essence of weapon power on me right now, so I'll just use that for the parse. Go ahead and slot that, and then go down to my trial dummy here, and we'll show you exactly what this looks like. Again, you can see over to the right hand side of my screen, I'm not wearing any trials gear whatsoever. And in case anybody's has any guff about having a perfected Maelstrom weapon. That was the only difference between the perfected and unperfected versions of these is the penetration that you get while you're on the build, and that only is active when you are on that bar. So just to go over the penetration, I'm sitting at 8,199 on the back bar for this. If I go to the front bar, I'm up and over 7,200. And as you can see, my critical chance there is good, and there's my weapon damage. So this is, I mean, this is more than helpful for trials and setups like this. So before being buffed at all, I'm going to critically strike just about half of the time. Now, why this is important to illustrate is because when I hit this trial dummy over here and I get uh, more buffs for my critical strike chance, that's going to go up. And so that is why you want to look at what you're slotting for when you figure out whether or not you want to slot Fighting Finesse or Wrathful Strikes, because Wrathful Strikes buffs your standard damage, Fighting Finesse buffs your critical damage. I wouldn't recommend using Backstabber in content because it's only a difference of 2. This is only active if you're flanking, where this is active at all times. So I would definitely use Fighting Finesse for content. So keep that in mind. But if you are below 50% on your critical strike rating on your build, then Wrathful Strikes is probably going to be more effective for you because you're going to be buffing the damage type that you're doing more often. So keep that in mind. It just depends on what your setup is. I'm just going to go over the really standard setup here. I'm only going to do basically the very basic stuff for the build to show what kind of a parse you can get with this. Let me just double check my CP here, make sure I've got that slotted correctly. If memory serves, I don't need Backstabber on this build because of how much critical damage you have, so I'm just going to move that off. Okay, so I'm just going to do the very basic rotation of getting my crux up and then beaming. And the add-on that I'm using for my bar is called the Fancy Action Bar. This is really good for parsing. I recommend it because it will give you an actual number for your skills rather than just a loading bar, basically. And you can also really count your crux very easily with this. And so it's very easy to keep track of whether or not you're out of crux or not. And as you can see with the add-on that I'm using over on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see what my weapon damage is. I'm doing over 100,000 weapon damage and I'm not using trials gear. So this is a really easy way to get into trials if you're trying to get away from a heavy attack build on a Sorc or a Oakensoul build, I should say. This is probably your best way to do that. And I'm talking while I'm doing this. It's a little bit harder for me to focus on that stuff. So I would probably do a lot better with not having to speak doing this. But this is just to give you an idea of how easy it is to do 100,000 damage DPS. And the other thing about this is it's cleave damage. It's not just single target or anything. This is cleave damage that I'm getting this on. So that's why this is effective. You just want to focus on getting your 3 crux up and then beaming. And you're going to get a lot of damage going on with this. And when I get done parsing, I'll show you what the Battle Scrolls add-on does. That's the tracker that you're seeing over the layer to the left. It's keeping track of my damage. But when I get done with this parse here, hopefully it doesn't last too much longer. This is about as simple of a build as you can get for stepping away from the oakensoul build. This is no trials gear. One of the sets is craftable, and the other one is available on traders. Deadly Strike you can buy from traders, or if you have alliance points, you can buy them from Bruma. I recommend going to the town to buy those in Bruma. Okay, we'll get this going here. Okay, so I've got 108,928, so just about 109,000 DPS there while talking, only using about 1.5 bars. And so clear that out. I'm going to leave the room here so I don't trigger off the dummies again. So we're going to go into the battle scrolls here and we'll analyze the parse. So this is another reason why battle scrolls is such a good, helpful tool. You can look at the information here as to the setup in your character screen. If you've got this activated, it'll show you exactly what the classes are at the top, the race and everything. Gives you your bar, your CP, and the weapons all on this screen. I'll just go ahead and freeze this right here. That's something I didn't remember to do is I have all medium gear in Divines with stamina glyphs. The only exception to that is the headpiece is a light piece of gear. The two daggers are charged with poison and flame. I have flame on the main hand and poison on the offhand. An infused weapon damage glyph there, and then the jewelry is all bloodthirsty with weapon damage glyphs as well. So you can look at that screen, as I said, in the character screen, and then come down to battle scrolls, and it will show you this view right here. However, the better way to look at the parse is you go into the journal, and you come down to the so this, I believe, is the parse here. Yeah. So this is the activated. So here's the parse. So as you can see, it's got an overview screen here. You're going to want to go to damage and look at it here. So this is how you can tell. You go to damage and then you come all the way down to the bottom here. And this is what you want to look at if you're setting up a different type of build and you don't know what type of slottables you want to use for your blue tree. This right here is the most important spot to look. Because this will tell you what type of damage to do on your CP tree for your slottables. So there's pretty much two groups. There's if you're doing direct damage versus damage over time, and direct damage means it happens instantly and it's over, or if it's something that ticks over time. And then there's area of effect and single target. So as you can see, this is predominantly an area of effect direct damage build. So those are the two main ones that you want to slot. And that is why we choose in the blue tree these two over here. This one here, Biting Aura, is for area of effect, and then Master at Arms is for direct damage. So these are the two that you want to slot in those situations. If you don't see those being the predominant damage types, then you want to switch it to whatever ones. This is single target, this is damage over time. So a good way to remember it, it's usually either or of these, and then either or of these two, because this is damage over time, this is direct damage, this is area of effect, this is single target. So don't guess on that. Do a parse and then look at your battle scrolls and look and legitimately see what is going on with your build. That's going to help you get more damage out of your build. You can really figure out on your build if, like, for example, if there's a skill that's just not doing a whole lot of damage and you use it quite often, maybe you can slot something else and see if there's something else on your build that you can get some more movement out of. For example, the quick cloak skill doesn't do a whole lot of damage, so that might be something that you switch out. However, you got to think about what that skill does It also procs your weapon glyphs 100% uptime, so keep that in mind. The other things to look at here is what you are at on your critical rate. As you can see right there in the quality section, I critically struck 65.4% of the time, and so that is important to keep in mind. If you're wanting to get a lot of damage out of your build, you got to pay attention to your critical strike rating and make sure you're getting a good number on there. I would recommend trying to get it up and over 50 as much as you can. So keep your eyes on that stat. As you can see, I'm doing 75%. The overview will show you the percentages as well for the damage types, the 75% direct damage and 67% AoE. So that is the indication as to what you want to look at for when you're trying to figure out what to slot for your CP slottables in your blue tree. But that's just going to be about it for this video. I just wanted to do a really simple setup. Again, you can do this on virtually any class. I would suggest keeping the Arcanist and the Assassin skill lines. So if those are your base classes, then you can, let's say you're on an Assassin for some reason, then you can put these two together, and that's probably going to be the easiest. Let's just go over the other classes really quickly. If you're on a Dragon Knight, for example, you're going to want to keep the Ardent Flame or possibly Earthen Heart. I'm not real positive on that because it's a refresh that's just happened. Maybe that's something I'll put into testing, but Ardent Flame is likely going to be your more powerful skill line there for in most cases. Um, this one is kind of more of a support role skill line, somewhat DPS skill line depending on your build, but for a subclass situation, you're probably going to need Ardent Flame. Sorcerer, I would definitely take Storm Calling and keep it, and then put the Assassination and Herald of the Tome with those. We've already covered these two skill lines, so we'll go over the Warden. You're obviously going to keep the Animal Companion skill line, as that is the DPS line. And then for Necromancer, without a doubt, Gravelords is the one to keep on that if you've got a Necromancer DPS. So those are going to give you probably similar setup results if you follow those guidelines. That is the easiest build, in my opinion, to still do effective damage. So I will just close out the video saying that if you have, for example, 6 to 8 DPS running this right here, number one, it's easy. Number two, it's going to be cleave damage. And why this build is effective for all content is because if you look at, for example, the penetration here, when you take into account of what tanks have to strip off armor-wise, if you have this much penetration on your build already, then that really frees up the type of sets that you have to run in your group. You don't need Alkosh anymore when you've got this much penetration, because the tanks are going to strip off just about 9,000 armor with major and minor breach, and then all you've got to do is run an infused crusher or a runic sunder taunt on your bar, and then you're pretty much got 0 armor left to deal with this kind of penetration. There's really no reason to run Alkosh anymore. It really frees up the rest of your DPS to run other buffing sets, for example, you could run War Machine on a support DPS instead and get a really long Major Slayer bomb for your group, that kind of thing. Critical chance is really important. You want to try and get that up and over 50% so that when you're getting buffed, you've got a lot of critical strikes happening. And then you want to pay attention to your critical damage. Really quickly, I'll just go over that. In case people don't know, the critical damage cap is 125%. So when you go to your advanced tab here and you come down to this right here, this is where your critical damage number is. You have to add 50% to this because they don't put that in there. So basically I am at 50% critical damage just standing still right here because I don't have other buffs being given to me right now. So I'm at 82%, so you can calculate that by looking at what you have slotted. And for example, the Assassination skill line, the Hemorrhage skill line will give you an increase of critical damage by 10%. So that'll give you up to 93. In content, I would definitely recommend putting Blazing Spear in this position or wherever you want on your front bar, and that will give you another 10% critical damage. So now we're up to 44, which is actually 94 critical damage. So the other thing that we're going to get from our skill lines is when we generate a crux, the splintered, or pardon me, the Fated Fortune is going to give us another 12% when we generate and spend a crux, and that happens pretty much at all times. You can't generate crux out of combat. So what you'd have to do is come down here to the combat dummy and get a real crux number here. So I'll just hit this guy here and go into the, and as you can see now I'm at 56. So that is 106 critical damage. So how do you get to the damage cap in the trial? From your group giving you critical damage, your tank wearing Lucent Echoes, for example. That's a really good way of getting up there. I've done a video in the past on how to get to the critical damage cap, but this build right here will make that extremely easy. Another way you can get critical damage is from your sets. For example, I'm wearing the Velothi Mage's Amulet, which gives me minor force at all times, giving me 10% critical damage there. Also, your medium armor pieces give you critical damage. There's a lot of different things to give you critical damage if you need it. So you'll just have to look into that to see how you need to calculate that. But you want to try and be at the critical damage cap in group with all the group buffs involved. But I'm going to end the video there. If you liked this video, thought it was helpful, please consider liking and subscribing to my YouTube channel. I will put a bunch of my playlists in the description so that if you're interested in any of my other content, you can check it out by clicking on the playlist link in the description. As always, I put a lot of information in my description, so please check it out. I will put my add-ons link for my playlist in there, my DPS link in there. I think those are probably the two main ones that I talked about in this video. So I will put the DPS and maybe I'll put the trial one in there too in case there's a video that's in there that's not in the other two. So I will include those playlists in the description. Please check it out if you're interested. Take a look at my channel and see what other content I have. Thank you again for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Bye.